You think the narcissist has forgotten you? No, they actually remember you more when you are gone than when you were standing right in front of them. Silence doesn't erase you, it highlights you as the one thing they can no longer control. And here is the part they absolutely never want you to know. Moving beyond no contact doesn't just free you, it places you in a psychological position they cannot reach, easily replace, or copy. I'm going to show you exactly why this is true if you are ready to understand how your psychological independence impacts the narcissist and how to keep that freedom long term. Stay with me, because what comes next will fundamentally change how you view this entire situation. The first point is simple yet deeply unsettling. A narcissist remembers you not because of the person you were, but because of the benefits you supplied. When someone consistently feeds their ego, calms their worries, or reflects the perfect image they wish to see, that person becomes psychologically valuable, not emotionally valuable. To a narcissist, you were a source of affirmation, predictability, admiration, and emotional effort. These things matter far more to them than the connection itself. When that source vanishes, the gap creates a hole in their supply system, and that hole sticks in their memory like a lingering ache they keep probing just to feel something. You might believe they move on quickly because they look indifferent or easily diverted, but that's only the surface appearance. Beneath that facade, the narcissist operates through established routines, and you were a key part of a pattern that served them well. Once a pattern is set, they don't forget it, they archive it for potential future use. They keep it in their emotional storehouse, not because they love you, but because you were once a dependable resource. Their memory is transactional. They recall you the way someone remembers a perfect tool that might be useful again. Even when they mistreated you, ignored your feelings, or found a replacement overnight, their attachment to what you represented doesn't vanish. It remains as a mental shortcut. You were someone they could access emotionally without earning it. That kind of easy access doesn't disappear from their mind because effortlessness in supply is uncommon. And the moment you step away, especially with genuine clarity and self-respect, you disrupt the role they assigned you. They don't forget disruptions. They don't forget challenges to their authority. They don't forget people who suddenly stop giving what they felt entitled to. This is why your memory remains active in their internal world. Not because they treasure you, but because the part of you they used is gone. And that specific loss forces them to remember the utility you once provided. Going beyond no contact means realizing that silence alone won't fix the internal damage the narcissist inflicted. You can block their number, unfollow every account, and physically remove them from your existence, but the psychological mark they left doesn't disappear with a simple click. Narcissists operate by attaching themselves to the vulnerable spots inside you, your yearning to be understood, your wish to be chosen, your hope that love can mend what is broken. These are the hooks they rely on. As long as those internal gaps remain unhealed, they still maintain emotional access to you, even if they can't reach you physically. This is why many people go no contact but still feel haunted by memories, wishful thinking, guilt, confusion, or a strange emotional pull back toward the person who harmed them. The true fight isn't on your phone screen, it's within your nervous system. The narcissist leaves behind patterns of self-doubt, a conditioned state of constant awareness and emotional responses that were shaped through cycles of idealization and tearing down. To truly break free, you must heal these reflexes, not just the relationship. You have to reclaim the parts of you that adapted to their instability. You must unlearn the belief that love means proving your worth, trying to fix someone else, or accepting emotional scraps. Going beyond no contact means rewriting the story you told yourself about why you remained, why you accepted certain behaviors, and why their approval felt so vital. It means understanding the psychological tricks they employed, inconsistent rewards, guilt traps, false promises for the future, trauma bonds, and taking back the power you unintentionally granted to those methods. When you do this inner work, the narcissist loses the last form of control they could ever hold over you, the emotional version of you that was still connected to them even after the relationship ended. The freedom that comes from this level of healing is untouchable by a narcissist. It isn't loud or dramatic. It's a quiet transformation inside you where their opinion ceases to matter, their memory stops hurting, and their existence stops defining how you view yourself. When you walk away from a narcissist, your silence achieves something far more profound than you might realize. It creates an injury they cannot ignore. This absence isn't merely a missing person. It's a major disruption to the emotional economy they built around your reactions, your empathy, and your dependability. Narcissists depend on predictable supply, and you stepping out of their pattern isn't just bothersome. It feels like an insult to their exaggerated sense of importance. That is what we call a narcissistic injury. It is the sting they feel when reality clashes with their fantasy of total control, superiority, and endless access to you. They might not show it. They might appear composed, act unconcerned, or even pretend they've already found a replacement, but their internal world operates differently. They don't process loss the way healthy people do. Instead of sadness, they feel unstable. Instead of longing, they feel threatened. Instead of reflecting, they obsess over the break in the routine. Silence becomes a mirror that forces them to face something they spend their entire lives avoiding, their own emptiness. So they circle back mentally, revisiting your memory, replaying your last interactions, wondering how someone they believed they owned managed to slip away without giving them a chance to reassert dominance. Even if they never try to reach out, the mental loop continues. They may secretly monitor your social media from a distance, inquire about you through mutual contacts, or experience phases where your name surfaces in their mind like an unresolved irritation. They don't miss you as a partner. They miss the authority they had over your emotional life. They don't miss the connection. They miss the supply. This internal reevaluation is not romantic or heartfelt. It is purely strategic. They store your memory as unfinished business because unfinished business makes them feel uncomfortable. Your silence forces them into a psychological discomfort they can neither alleviate nor remove. And that discomfort becomes the reason they don't forget you. It is not about love. It is about the injury they cannot reverse. A narcissist doesn't remember the relationship the way you do. They remember the sense of dominance, the control gained, and the benefits they took from you. When you depart, what lingers in their mind isn't the laughter, the shared moments of closeness, or the emotional depth you believed you had. What they recall is the pattern you fit into, the pattern where they were elevated and you were manageable. That is why detachment threatens them on a level they cannot easily put into words. You were not merely a person to them, you were a role that served to reinforce their fragile self-image. When that role disappears, they lose the psychological support they use to steady themselves. Narcissists rely heavily on external affirmation to maintain their identity. They lack an internal source of self-worth, so they build their entire sense of self from how others respond to them. You were part of that structure, your admiration, your focus, your emotional investment, all of it became proof that they were important, desirable, and superior. When you detach, you remove that proof, and your absence becomes a weakness in the identity they try so desperately to protect. This is why detachment feels more threatening than conflict. Fighting still keeps you involved. Explaining yourself still keeps you involved. Even anger keeps you emotionally tied to them. But detachment is fundamentally different. It silently communicates something they cannot stand. You see them clearly now. You are no longer participating in their fantasy. You are no longer accepting the version of reality they attempted to impose on you, and the moment you see through them, a subtle but powerful shift occurs. They lose their sense of dominance over you. That specific loss is unforgettable to them, not because they care about you, but because your absence marks the moment when their control dissolved. A narcissist will remember the person they couldn't emotionally manipulate more vividly than the person who worshipped them. Control defines the relationship in their worldview, so losing control defines the memory, and your detachment becomes a lasting reminder of that loss, one they cannot delete no matter how hard they try. What most people fail to realize is that emotional growth is the one thing a narcissist cannot predict or handle. They operate on the assumption that you will always react the way you used to, by explaining yourself, trying to fix things, seeking clarification, or hoping for the version of them who once seemed loving. Your emotional evolution shatters that entire cycle. When you begin healing, establishing boundaries, and seeing patterns with greater clarity, you move from being reactive to being self-guided. This change confuses them because their whole system depends on your predictable response. As long as you remain the person you were during the relationship, they know precisely how to pull your strings. But once you grow emotionally and mentally, you become someone they can't map. And that unpredictability worries them more than silence ever could. The narcissist remembers the version of you they shaped, the version that would bend, excuse, forgive, and accept less than you deserved. But when you evolve past that version, you eliminate the psychological blueprint they created for interacting with you. That is why your growth torments them. They cannot manipulate someone who now recognizes the manipulation. They can't guilt someone who no longer feels responsible for their emotions. They can't shame someone who has reclaimed their self-worth. They can't use confusion when you finally understand the cycle. They can't use fear when you are no longer afraid to lose them. Your personal evolution confronts them with something they avoid at all costs, the reality that they are not as powerful as they pretend to be. It makes them realize they never truly controlled you, they only controlled the wounded parts of you. So when those parts heal, their influence vanishes. And what vanishes feels like a profound rejection to them, even if you never spoke a word. This is why your personal development becomes unforgettable. It exposes their weaknesses, it breaks their script, it destroys their fantasy of dominance. A narcissist can replace attention, affection, and even people. But they cannot replace the feeling of losing control over someone they once molded. Your growth becomes the one change they can't reverse, manipulate, or rewrite. What stays with a narcissist long after the relationship ends isn't your silence, your distance, or your physical absence. It's the version of you that no longer exists. What haunts them most is your evolution because it directly contradicts the story they told themselves about you and the power they believed they held over your emotional world. Narcissists rely on people staying static. They assume that the wounds they created will keep you small, insecure, doubtful, and easy to lure back into old patterns. When you grow past those wounds, you challenge their entire narrative. You become living proof that their influence was temporary, not lasting. This inner change is something they can't grasp because narcissists rarely truly grow. They repeat the same emotional cycles, the same blame patterns, the same superficial coping methods. So when you evolve, when you become more centered, more self-aware, more emotionally strong, it highlights exactly how stuck they are. They don't forget that feeling. In their world, being outgrown is an insult. Even if you never meant it that way, it makes them feel replaceable, ordinary, and powerless. 3 feelings they spend their lives avoiding. Your evolution also creates a harsh contrast they can't escape. You healing shows them all the places inside themselves that remain damaged. You finding clarity shows them the confusion they still inhabit. You setting boundaries exposes how dependent and lacking boundaries they truly are, And even though they will never admit it, they recognize that the very growth you achieved came from leaving them, not staying with them. This is why they replay your story in their mind, not because they miss the relationship, but because your transformation threatens their self-image. It disrupts the belief that they had lasting emotional power over you. A narcissist can handle being ignored, replaced, or blocked, but being outgrown touches a deeper insecurity, one that whispers that they are not nearly as significant as they pretend to be. And once you evolve beyond their reach, that realization becomes a memory they can't forget, no matter how hard they try. Going beyond no contact means reclaiming the parts of yourself that were overshadowed, silenced, or reshaped by the relationship. It is not just the physical distance that matters. It is the internal shift where you stop defining yourself through the filter of what the narcissist desired, needed, or expected from you. When you were with them, your boundaries were violated, your instincts were questioned, and your reality was constantly twisted to fit their story. Even after leaving, traces of those distortions remain. You may still second-guess your decisions, feel guilty for putting yourself first, or experience a persistent draw toward the very person who caused the wound. Going beyond no contact means taking apart these internal lingering effects one by one. It is the process of learning to trust yourself again, to believe your own perceptions, and to rebuild a sense of identity that isn't dependent on their approval or disapproval. It means examining the emotional habits you developed, walking on eggshells, over-explaining, minimizing your needs, and slowly replacing them with healthier routines. It means understanding that their reactions are no longer your responsibility and their lack of empathy is no longer your burden. The more you reconnect with your own voice, the less their influence resonates in your mind. This kind of healing also involves redefining what love, connection, respect, and peace truly feel like. You begin to recognize that intensity isn't intimacy, chaos isn't passion, and inconsistency isn't love. You reclaim the right to feel secure in your own emotional space. As you do this work, the narcissist loses the power they once had to provoke you, confuse you, or pull you back. Your boundaries stop being reactive and become natural extensions of who you are. Going beyond no contact is ultimately about moving from survival mode to self-alignment. It is the moment you stop running from the past and start moving toward a future that reflects your authentic values. And in that shift, the narcissist becomes smaller, quieter, less relevant. You are no longer the version of yourself they shaped. You become the version you were always meant to be. The true power after leaving a narcissist isn't in blocking them or staying silent. It's in becoming someone they can no longer access emotionally, even if they were to appear at your door tomorrow. Narcissists depend on emotional entry points, your empathy, your guilt, your desire for a clear ending, your hope that they might finally understand what they did. These are the doors they walk through repeatedly. As long as those doors are open, even slightly, they still feel connected to you. They still believe they hold influence. They still assume you can be drawn back into the cycle. Going beyond no contact means closing those doors from the inside, not with anger or resentment, but with genuine clarity. This internal closure isn't loud. It doesn't require a dramatic statement or confrontation. It's a quiet shift where your heart no longer races at the sound of their name. Your mind no longer practices what you would say, and your body no longer reacts as if it's anticipating the next emotional blow. When you reach that state, the narcissist loses the last lifeline they ever had to you. Emotional access was their source of power. The ability to confuse you, charm you, guilt you, destabilize you, or pull you into old habits was their advantage. Once that internal link dissolves, they become just another person from your past, stripped of the emotional weight they once carried. This is the moment that most disturbs them. Narcissists can cope with being blocked, insulted, or confronted because those reactions still signify emotional engagement. What they cannot handle is emotional neutrality. When you stop seeking affirmation, stop wanting an explanation, and stop reacting to their methods, you remove the energy that fueled their behavior. They become irrelevant in your inner world. And that irrelevance is something they can't control or reverse. Emotional freedom is what makes you truly unreachable, not unreachable physically, but unreachable psychologically. And when the narcissist finally grasps that nothing they say, do, or promise can pull you back into the dynamic you once shared, that realization becomes the one thing they can never forget.